I see a lot of people not wanting to feel what they feel. And I see a lot of people wanting to reject anything that they think other people might find kind of weird about them. Whereas I see the weird things in people are what make you who you are. You know, be who you are and be weird. It's weird also, ironically, is that the most ordinary people nowadays, the most normal people, are actually considered weird because everybody else is just so bizarre. And I think the first law of women in life on semen retention, once you get to a certain point where you have to realize, like, okay, I am needing to let go of everything I thought I knew. And this goes with spiritual awakenings, this goes with the semen retention in general, this goes with the practice of living a more fruitful, positive, prosperous life. Because the fact of the matter is many people are just not going to be able to understand what semen retention is really about. And I want to welcome everybody to another Semen Retention Sunday here on the Regal Change account. I've got my cup of Joe with me today. No, Reese's does not sponsor me. I'm not promoting Reese's. I just like this mug. That's all it is. I've had several people ask me about it. I don't know why. But anyway, so the first law is to let go and recognize that everything that is good in your life, everything that God wants for you in your life, it's going to find its way back to you. Okay? The law of this is derived, I believe, from the recognition of surrendering to God's will. Once you recognize the importance of surrender and to let go of the hypnotic deviations and rebelliousness of people that don't follow God, and then you let go of the rigidity and hyper-religiousness of the people that claim to follow God and claim to follow Christ but don't, and then you actually get to follow Christ for who he is. You know, and Jesus wants us to follow him based on his true identity. It's not about the hippie image of Jesus. Okay, if you've ever read the Bible, actually read the Bible, you'll see that Jesus was an OG. Like, he was a bad A. Okay, he was so cool, man. He was just so cool, and he's not at all like the image that so many people prop him up to be in society. He's just not like the hippy dippy Bible thumping bro. No, but I do think that he had like a sense of I think he had a sense of humor for sure. I think he had a sense of personability. Otherwise, obviously, he wouldn't be who he is. But one thing that I think about women as well that most men start semen retention on and for is for women. And look, you go to the gym for women when you first start out, usually, right? When you first start out going to the gym, you go to the gym for women, and you go to the gym because you want to be able to get better women, and there's nothing really wrong with that. But to do it for the sole purpose of getting women is kind of a cuck attitude, and I don't recommend sustaining that kind of ability and that view of life and perspective of life indefinitely, because it's going to only hinder your spiritual fulfillment down the line. And it's like, well, why bother even being spiritually fulfilled? Well, that's a good question. Well, because do you want to feel like there's always something new, that there's always something else that you could be focusing on instead of the things that you have right here, right now? You know, if you have something good, focus on it and maintain it. In the Garden of Eden, what were we instructed to do? What was humanity, Adam and Eve, instructed to do? Well, they were instructed to care for the garden, tend to the garden. That's what we're supposed to do, but in our own lives. And so if you have something good, keep it and maintain it and keep it well. You know, I would say like 80% of relationships are really about maintenance. at least in my experience and from what I've seen with people that I've worked with all over the world in my one-on-one mentorships and Godlike Master Initiation program, yeah, okay, it is absolutely about maintaining relationships 80% of the time. The 20% you're doing new things or novel things and whatnot, but the 80% you're sticking to some kind of, it's not necessarily like a schedule, but some kind of routine. And I think you need a routine sometimes. And on semen retention, you're going to be able to see this play out a little bit more differently in your relationships than you normally would when you're a depleted coomer, because you're actually looking at how life works. You're actually in tune with life. You're in tune with nature on semen retention in a way you wouldn't have been otherwise. And the reason for this is because, well, you're not just giving your soul away and your energy away to everybody that comes around you. You're just not. You are instead living a life that is fulfilling, that is full of God, that is full of grace and His grace. And there's this, almost this, well, I would say this. In the Art of Seduction class that we've been doing in the Regal Change Academy recently, we talked about the two different kinds of modes of seduction. And the first one is the feminine, okay? And that is based on appearances. And the second is masculine, and that's based on words and the use of language, okay? And on semen retention, you just naturally start to take care of these aspects of yourself a little bit more, because you're recognizing the balance inside yourself and within life in general. And you have to recognize that all of these women that are out here that are playing mind games or whatnot, they're going to come back if you just are able to let go. And I think a lot of men don't want to admit that. They want to hold on, and I get it. You know, I used to be a beta male as well. And I would say I'm now, I would say I have beta tendencies, but I'm an alpha male, because that part of me still exists inside of me, because my natural proclivity, because of the way that I was raised and in my environment for, you know, for so long, it's to naturally care for women and people more than myself. And it took me a long time to put my self-interests first. And part of that process was being on semen retention, learning that it's okay to put myself first. And I've been on semen retention for years now, but it still doesn't negate the fact that it's only amplified this, because I learned this when I was in my early 20s, and I'm 29 now. But it's only amplified in the degree in which I can see the superfluousness of putting others before myself. Now, there's nothing wrong with loving people, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to sacrifice what you've got going on for people that you love and care for and whatnot. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't make yourself into a martyr. Don't make yourself into somebody that you don't really need to be, okay? Because at that point, you're basically just, you're throwing away a lot of forms of life within you that you could otherwise have had the explicit understanding to harness and to live out in a way that brings life to life. Because sometimes in life, we have to eat life in order to have life, right? Like, we have to eat the fruits off the tree, or the, you know, we have to eat the carrots out of the ground or whatever. We have to eat the meat. Again, if you eat meat or not, it's up to you, but I like my meat, okay? I like a lot of meat, because I would say about 75 to 80% of my diet right now is meat. And that's just the way that I roll. I like it because it works for me. I don't feel bloated. You know, if I have too many carbs, even good carbs, you know, even like good carbs, like sourdough bread, real sourdough bread, man, even if I have a little bit too much of that, I'll start to feel bloated. You know, I also enjoy my sweets. I used to have a really big sweet tooth before I started to get more fit. And I was nearly 200 pounds about 5 years ago. Okay. And now I'm about 140, 149 to 155, depending on the week now, whether I'm fasting a lot or not. Like right now, I'm about 154, but I like to hover in between that 149 to 155 because that's where I get to keep my muscle mass while still maintaining, like, you know, a mild form of leanness. But I don't have to like count calories or count carbs or count proteins or anything anymore. I'm able to look at it, and I don't take it too seriously, but I take it sincerely. And that's really my approach to life in general now. But you have to learn how to let go of this desire to be perfect all the time with your nutrition or with your work or whatever. I've seen a lot of people that I work with have this like perfectionist mindset, and my work is to undo that because there's a lot of people that they almost get stuck in stagnation when they have this perfectionist mindset. And I know what that's like because I used to have a perfectionist mindset as well. And I don't think it's any coincidence that a lot of the people that I've worked with in my one-on-one sessions and everything like that, where that's been a consistent theme. And I think that's because that's exactly the kind of person I used to be. And so now that I'm out of that mode of being, I can help other people get to that place. Because as Carl Jung said, the best way to deal with your own darkness, or the best way to deal with other people's darkness, is to learn how to deal with yours. And I think that if you can learn how to incorporate these things, if you can learn how to channel the ability and the energy to fight your own battles internally, because it is kind of like an energy current that you have to channel in order to get to where you need to be internally. And you treat your mind as an electromagnetic satellite for a reason, you know, because it is, number one. But number two, it's like you have to recognize that this whole life, okay, consciousness itself is what's real. So your mind, like, remember in the Matrix when Morpheus tells Neo, well, your mind makes it real. And then Neo has the spoon, right? He has the spoon with the kid, and the kid's like bending the spoon, and Neo's like, how did you do that? And Neo takes the spoon, and, you know, he tries to do that, and the kid says the best thing to realize is there is no spoon. There is no spoon. There is no spoon. It is all just in your mind. But that doesn't mean that it's not real. Okay, that doesn't mean that it's not real. So if you can bend reality to your will, and I had somebody in a call ask me about this recently, because they're like, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean bend reality to your will? Well, it's like, can you formulate the certain thought algorithms that you need to have to view the world in a lens in which you can look and see what's actually happening, and then see what you want to have happen, and then not really force your will, but what's the word I'm thinking of? Why am I thinking of? It's almost like you import your will onto the world. You import your will, because you like download what you want to have happen into reality through your thoughts, because your thoughts are just objects, right? And this is something else that on semen retention you start to recognize a little bit more, is that, oh, I'm not my thoughts. You see, people think semen retention is all about getting women, and it's all about, you know, just having all of the benefits and such. But only people that truly understand what semen retention is and does are going to grow closer to God, their own mind and their own heart and their own soul, and recognize reality for what it is. It's consciousness playing itself out. Consciousness is God's imagination being played out. And I talk about this in my book, the Book of Oldishness. And I had just published it a few weeks ago. And I want to do an author's meetup. I actually had somebody in the Regal Change Academy community ask me if I'm going to do an author's meetup. And I thought that was a good idea. So I'm going to do that. And that's probably going to be in a couple weeks from now. Because actually, you know what? I will decide that it will be in a couple weeks from now. I'll send out a invoice and a message for everybody. Not an invoice. What am I thinking of? An email. I'm thinking of import and invoice and all that. I guess you kind of like invoice the universe in some ways when you bend reality to your will. I haven't thought about it like that, but anyway. I want to do an author's meetup because I think that would be very useful for people, because I've had a lot of people ask me questions about the book and they're like, okay, this is definitely not what I thought it was going to be, but in the best way. And it's like, that's fantastic. That's what I want to hear. I want people to have like this is a novel book, right? It's unlike any other book people have read. And I've had people tell me that. And that's great. I mean, that's exactly what I want. You know, that's exactly the aim that I was going for. And my aim in the book was to put more into a sentence than most people do in a book. I wanted to do that. And with everything that I do, with all of my work that I do, whether it's with videos, with the Regal Change Academy, with my Godlike Master Initiation program, with the one-on-one sessions, everything that I do, I want to revolutionize psychology and spirituality. But specifically in the book, my aim was to put more into a sentence than most people do in a book. Well, why is that? Nietzsche, who I think had a lot of truthful things to say, but I don't prescribe or subscribe to all of his philosophies. He said at one point in one of his books that he writes more in a book than most people do in their, or he writes more in a sentence than most people do in a book. And I thought that was just a profoundly, profoundly arrogant, but in the best way possible kind of statement. And so I was like, well, I'm going to make that my goal. I want to do that. And so that's why one of the reasons it took me 5 years to write the book, you know, and it's because it's this process, you know. Sometimes you have to write certain things and you'll have like 10 ideas about a sentence and you'll rewrite the sentence, you know, 10 times before you finally get it to, okay, now it's got more in a sentence than it does in a book and other places. All right, fantastic. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I want. Okay, cool. We got this. But it takes like 10 rewrites of the sentence sometimes. And so it took me 5 years to write the book for this reason. But it was a great practice. And I approached it as if this was going to be the only book I ever wrote. You know, that's not going to be the case. But I approached it like that because I think that in some ways, even with videos like I do like this, I approach it as if it's going to be my first and my last time doing something. And for some reason, it gives it that spontaneous zest to life, but it also gives me the freedom to let go. And that comes back to the very first law of Women in Life on Semen Retention, which is don't try to cling on to things. Okay, when it comes to enlightenment especially, and I'm not claiming to be enlightened, okay, because I think that's missing the point of enlightenment. I know I don't know everything. And some people that are not on this frequency, they'll be like, oh, well, then he doesn't have the authority. Because they want authority. They want people to tell them what to do except for God. They want everybody to tell them what to do and how to do it except for God. Okay? That's a rebelliousness mindset, by the way. But anyway, what was I saying? Shoot. I lost it. Haha. Let go, right? So, you treat everything like it's the first time and the last time. You treat everything like it's the first time and the last time, and that'll give you the spontaneousness and the zest of life, but also the freedom to let go. With everything that you do, try that out. I'm not giving you advice here, by the way. because I know I don't know everything. This is exactly what I'm talking about, is like, the more your circumference of knowledge grows, the more you realize how much you don't know. And the people that have like this much knowledge, they're like, oh, well, I know it all. That's the frequency I'm not going to be on. I'm on the frequency where people have this much circumference of knowledge, or even this much circumference of knowledge, and they're like, oh, I know crap. When in reality, they know more than everybody else. They just have the humility to see that. And that's the kind of people that I'm targeting with these videos and such. Is I want people who are going to resonate with this. I don't need people in my community, or just within my vicinity that are thinking like this. I just don't. I have better and more important things to worry about than people who think that they have life figured out when they're really not happy or fulfilled inside. It's like, I know I don't have life figured out all the way, and thank God for that, because I don't know if I could handle some of the stuff that only God knows. Because sometimes there are going to be things in life that only God understands. There's going to be things only God knows. And thank God for that. Because, whew, do you want to be burdened with all of that? I know I sure don't. I know I sure don't. And a lot of people might think that, oh, well, I want to be able to, I want to be able to have that knowledge and such. It's like, remember the first rule and the first law of women and life on semen retention, okay? Let go of that crap, bro. Like, let go of that crap. You don't want to know everything. Believe me, you don't. Anybody that's been on psychedelics knows exactly what I'm talking about here. Because if you've been on psychedelics, you'll realize, like, holy there's so much more to life. Like, it's kind of like this, right? Imagine your mind is like a battery, okay? And when you are on semen retention, you get like, or when you're on semen retention and psychedelics, that's crazy. That's crazy, I'm sure. I haven't done psychedelics for 4 years. So it's been since before I started semen retention, because I've been on semen retention since May of 2022. But I can imagine semen retention on psychedelics would be crazy. But in general, psychedelics just puts you in a state of mind that, I mean, you anybody that knows what I'm talking about knows what I'm talking about. So psychedelics, when you get to that point where you're like, oh my gosh, like the last time I did psychedelics, I had a not so good trip. I had done dozens and dozens and dozens of trips before that within like 2 years, which was a lot, granted. But like, I had done a lot of that kind of stuff. And there was this last trip that I did, I had seen like this golden tree surrounded by this golden orb, and it looked like it was the tree of life, and then all of a sudden I had these auditory hallucinations, because I like to do psychedelics when I do them. I don't plan to ever do them again, really, but when I did do them, I like to do them in silent darkness. And so I had these auditory hallucinations, and I started to see these cowboy aliens that were like lizards. They were like cowboy alien lizards that were trying to take the people and me away from our souls. And it was a very disturbing image, Oh, hey, the sun's coming out a little bit. Thank goodness for that, because it was a bit chilly this morning. It was a bit chilly, which is interesting because yesterday was very, very warm. But anyway, so what ended up happening was I heard the mushroom tell me, it's like, oh, so you think you know something about consciousness, huh? You think you know? And it was at that moment I knew I f***ed up. When that was the longest trip I ever felt like I had. It just lasted forever, man. I remember lighting incense. I lit incense, And I just watched the incense burn, and I was like, it's burning forever, man. It's burning forever. Like the thing, and it was literally only like 10 seconds. But since I had lit it, but it literally felt like years, you know. And so crazy stuff happening in that kind of instance. But anyways, the sun is really, I mean, it feels nice, actually. It feels really good. Hold on just a second. Oh yeah, that's the stuff right there. That's the warmth. Whew. But yeah, so crazy experience, crazy time, but I wouldn't have traded it for anything. You know, even though it was a horrible, terrifying experience in many ways, I don't want to change that, and I don't want to let go of that experience. I want to let go of it in the way that, like, it's freeing, you know. I don't need to have it again, but I also don't want to lose that experience. I don't want to lose what I learned from it. All right. So that's really what I also want to get at with this law of semen retention in life is it's okay to not let go of experiences, to learn from those experiences, to learn from those mistakes, whatever it is. But you need to let go of that indefinitely in the long term. Like, remember it, but and keep it in your heart, but ultimately you're gonna have to let it go sooner or later. Death is around the corner for anybody. You know, that's the only thing that's certain in life is death. Death, they say death and taxes, right? I don't like that. I don't like that taxes is a certainty of life. But death, I'm actually okay with, ironically enough. So, you know, with all that being said, I hope this message was useful and insightful for you. Peace be with you all, and until next time.